Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Thomas Esterman. I'm Director of Governance, Funding and Public Policy Development at EUA. Before we start the session, may I just invite the people who are at the corners. If you come into the middle, it would be nicer, I think, for everyone. We know that the acoustics are much better. So, excellent. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to chair this session on mergers at European universities. We're talking about mergers, but also other concentration processes. I can promise you we will have an exciting 1.5 hours. I also would like to welcome all people who watch us over live stream. So we're in the spirit of the conference of digitalization. And I would like also to invite everyone to send in questions via Twitter. By now you already know the hashtag EUA 2016 Go Away. So we will watch that. So send in comments, questions, and any remarks, and we will discuss that. I'm delighted that we have 2 university leaders with us who have undergone mergers, are in the middle of it. We had already before discussed a little bit where they are in the stage, and that's always a question of perspective. Have you completed it? Are you during the implementation? So we will go through, I think, many interesting questions in this 1.5 hours. I would like to encourage you to really also get engaged in the discussion. We want to make it interactive and lively. So it's my pleasure to present to you Marie Sundli-Tveit, Rector at the University of Life Sciences in Norway. Marie's academic background is on landscape and nature management. She's a professor of landscape architecture. She has been a member of many boards in academic organizations, and she's also an EUA board member. And she is, depending on the point of view, in the middle of a merger, a major merger of bringing 2 institutions together, University of Life Sciences and the Institution of Veterinary Medicine, and on top of that, managing a major infrastructure project on top of that. So I think that will be very interesting to hear from you how you're leading this process. So thanks for being with us.
Okay.
And we also have with us Bryn McRae, from President of University, Dublin City University. Bryn is has a chair in physics and is also a member of many research institutes. I don't go through all the details, but you have in the biography. And he's also supporting student entrepreneurship. It's very worth mentioning because we have also finished this conference with mentioning the importance of students in everything that we discuss. And he has been leading a different type of merger of integrating 3 educational institutions that, as far as I know, have been already been there for a while into the younger institution that he's leading. So I think that will be also very interesting to hear a little bit about challenges that poses. So I'm delighted that you're here as well. And before we share your experiences, I would like to share with you some of the findings from a study that we've been undertaking at EUA on university mergers. That has been part of a major project we've been conducting over 3 years. where we're looking at the efficiency of systems, strategies for efficient funding, and one point that we looked at was performance-based funding, another one funding for excellence, and we also looked at mergers from the perspective of efficiencies. And some highlights of these studies are, at one point, we also wanted to see a little bit what is actually the situation across Europe. And you can see from this slide that since 2000, from 2000 to 2014, they have been growing. So we have really monitored growing trend of merging universities. Importantly, I have to say, is not only merging to create a new institution, a new legal entity out of several institutions, but it's also about different degrees of bringing institutions together. And with this next slide, you can see also in which countries these mergers happen. So you have here cases where you have system-wide processes, like in Denmark, where you have a number of important mergers starting in 2007. You have also the case of Estonia, with several smaller institutions being merged into bigger universities. You have the case of France, where you have a different type of movement with the creation of university communities, where you not merge them into one legal entity, but where institutions have their independent legal entity, but are coming together under a type of umbrella. And with this mapping, we also created a merger tool, so I invite you to have a look at that. We have found around 100 mergers, and here you can also see which institutions were merged, because it's not always the same type of merger that's happening, and this is probably very interesting to have a look. We wanted to do this also to share a bit the information of what kind of different types are around in Europe, because we can see that particularly someone who wants to undertake a merger is looking for cases somewhere else. I think both of you probably had lots of visitors asking how it was going, and this is something this tool will help you with to find out where are similar cases, to find out what's happening. And here with this slide, just to show you that how we differentiate. I mean, there are many ways of differentiating, but this is one way of doing it. You can look at the depth of integration, mergers or clusterings, or you can also look at other types of concentration processes. We see a growth in alliances, in consortia, in strategic partnerships. So you find very different types. It was also very interesting to look at the profile of the institutions. Are you merging to similar institutions with the same profile, or do you merge institutions that have very complementary profiles? So that gives you already very different dimensions. Also, as I said, the question of the size. Do you merge to similar big institutions, or do you integrate two smaller institutions into a big one? So that will require, again, a very different approach in the design and in the implementation. We also wanted to know, of course, why this is happening. Why are there suddenly so many mergers? And there is not a simple answer to that question, because first of all, it depends who do you ask. Do you ask governments? Do you ask ministries? Do you ask institutions? But already within institutions, who do you ask? Within an institution, you might get slightly different answers. So, but what we found, certainly one of the big drivers is to enhance the visibility nationally, internationally. That is something that we found a lot to really attract the students, but also researchers, academics within to these new institutions, to create new opportunities for learning, for research and teaching, for corporations. We also heard to increase the negotiation power via funders, public authorities, so that has been one expectation. And of course, everything that circles around economies of scale, with the idea that with bigger institutions, you receive more funding, you enhance the research income, but also the idea of rationalization, of being more focused in your offer, and also creating efficiencies. Now, those are the expectations, and quite clearly what we've seen, it's not always that they are achieved, because many things not only depend on the design of the merger, but also on the implementation. So we will hear, I think, very good stories from Bren and from Mari. To conclude with some key elements that we found, obviously we looked at it on the aspect of efficiency, and that is also a driver, but we clearly found out that just for financial reasons you should not undertake a merger. It is the academic vision that really needs to be in the forefront. Nevertheless, you need to also have a good and realistic evaluation of the cost, because if you have strong academic vision and midway you run out of funding, then it doesn't go well. So that's important. The establishment of an appropriate working structure, of a governance model, is something that's also very important. We will talk about this. And of course, leadership. The leadership, that was something really the common thread through all cases that we looked at, makes a big difference of the success of a merger. So I'm very happy that we can discuss this here, and very strongly related to that is the communication strategy. Now, the communication strategy, obviously, that sounds evident that this is important, but we've seen quite a number of cases where, despite this evidence, it worked out not so well, and we've seen cases where the communication strategy really made a difference. And again, it's the leadership. If the leadership creates this common vision of being able to bringing all the stakeholders within the institution, but also without the institution, on board, then it's easier to go through this very complex and major process. So, and very often this is one of the final points I would like to make, because we've seen this also in many discussions. It's about the added value. So we of course looked at the costs, etc., but that's just one side. So the question of what's the added value of the new institution, what can it achieve in the long term, that is also an important part of the strategy. That was it. What I wanted to really give as a first input from the study. You can of course have more details in the reports. You will find them on our website. And I'm of course happy to answer any questions on that later as well. So really this was just to give a short structure, and now we want to fill this with the meat of the experience of our two university leaders. Can I maybe ask Mari to share a bit your experience with your merger, to paint us first maybe a picture, so that the audience gets an idea of the size, of the timeline, the challenges.
I'll do that, but first I'd like to say thank you for the overview and for the work behind that overview that EUA has done, and I'll get back to that, because personally as a leader doing this merging, which is challenging, I've had, well, it's been a great help actually to the work that the EUA has done. on mergers for me as a leader, and I think all the other people, maybe some of you are in this room that were part of the focus group on mergers. That was extremely helpful in the process. So this process, it started back in 2008, so that's becoming a long time ago, with a parliament decision. And it was a parliament decision that was controversial because there was a lot of debate about the academic vision that one should go for when it came to who veterinary schools in Norway should merge with. For different circumstances, including the fact that there was a great need for a new infrastructure. I'll come back to that. That school would merge with either the University of Oslo, and that would strengthen the medical part of it, or it would merge with the former agricultural university, the Norwegian University of Life Sciences, which would strengthen the biosciences and the link to the agricultural sciences, which also had in it this vision of creating a university that would be almost tailor-made to meet some of the grand global challenges that we're facing relating to bioeconomy, development of a sustainable bioeconomy, feeding the 9 billion, climate change, and so forth. So, needless to say, that academic vision won. But that was controversial back in 2008. So we started in a challenging situation, very challenging situation, and then we had 6 years of discussing how, what the new university was going to be, what organizational models should we have, budget models, all the decisions that had to be made. We spent 6 years doing that, and let me that's my first conclusion, that is too long. So that's a take-home message for you. 6 years is too long. I'm sure we can talk much more about the struggles along the way, but we took it step by step. We've come a very long way, and what started as very controversial has become a story that we believe in. So that is a very good thing. The 1st of January 2014, the actual merger took place, and the parliament sanctioned that we became the Norwegian University of Life Sciences. And so it has this institutional aspect of making a new university of 2 former very strong institutions. These are very strong and old institutions in Norway. They have lots of history, pride, identity, very strong academic institutions, and the trick is to bring all this, all the good stuff, everything that we stand for, into a new sense of pride and belonging, and being able to harness these synergies that we're looking for, the academic vision. And on top of that, we have the fact that to move the veterinary school to be part of the Norwegian University of Life Sciences, that will take infrastructure development costing, you can hold on to your shares now, around 1 billion euros. Yes, so those are 9 zeros. Okay, so this is a very large infrastructure development. We're building 63,000 square meters of top-notch educational and research facilities, clinics, all the rest of it. So we're in the middle of that now, and that is also, let's just say, it's a great pleasure. It's a bliss, but it's a lot of work. So we're doing that. Since this was a government decision, and it was something that, or a parliament decision, it was something that the government strongly wanted, the stakeholders involved in this, throughout the process, we had several ministries with strong stakes in the process. Also, obviously, since we had so much debate over which direction this should go in, there were lots of stakeholders throughout society, everything from the veterinary organizations to different political parties to, well, you name it. So, huge interest in the project that we were doing. And I think we still enjoy that interest. So that is good. So at the time being, we have 2 campuses. They're 40 kilometers apart, not very far, but still it can be rather challenging to try to bring together something which is not in the same place. We are fortunate to be looking forward to being in the same place, so I think, again, it's really looking good. And we are working very hard in developing the common ground, making that basis for the academic synergy that we are looking for. I'm very proud to say that within the first year of merger, we could already see that we were very competitive in terms of gaining funds to the university. To mention one example, in the Norwegian Research Council, there's something called, it's equal to the Centers of Excellence in research, but it's innovation. It's more towards innovation, research-driven innovation. But it's 300 million kroner platform. So it's a big thing within the first year to gain that, and there were 2 departments from each of the old institutions that were involved. So we are bridging it, and we have these success stories, and we can already see that academically this was a good idea. Obviously, the best way to create this sense of belonging and pride and culture is having success stories and talking about them and showing them off. So, what I could say is that when you start off at a quite sort of controversial point and you have an interim board that works for a long time establishing the new university, inevitably this interim board will make decisions that have a sort of compromise-like character. So, and sometimes you just have to accept that that's the way forward, you know, to come anywhere at all, to reach the point where you actually say that this is where we start, this is the new university. You have to make compromises, and sometimes you actually know that these compromises will have to, you know, we will have to change this in not very long time. So I will reveal to you that now, after 2 years, I'm in the middle of not sort of getting the wheels going, and now we're way into it, but now we're reorganizing everything. so this is how it goes. So you sometimes you get off at a sort of challenging starting point, but you just have to work with it. And I think a great thing about our merger and the spirit at the university now is that we are very ambitious. We're sort of forward-leaning. Everyone's we're sort of upwards flowing. Like something that you put in water and just pops up. And it's so we really want to take that ambition and get academic successes out of it. And I think that the feeling that we had of controversy is gone. And the people that were against it, they all I want to do is say that they've done such a great job in changing their minds and spirits and going into it full on. And I can see that we are very close to being together in actually believing in ourselves and what we're going to contribute to it. And we are totally telling the story about the great global challenges and how we're going to contribute to solving that. So that is, that's one version of the story.
Excellent.
I was saying there are other versions, but we can come back to. There's so many problems in these mergers. You cannot, as a leader at least, you cannot spend the time talking about all the problems. You have to talk about the possibilities and all the good that's coming out of it. And I think that's worked quite well.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mari. I think you painted a very good picture, so I think people really got an idea of the size of the undertaking. We nevertheless want to dig a little bit deeper later on how you went there. I mean, I think you said it's important to have success stories and a great sense of belonging. So I think we'll come back to the point of how you arrived there. But I'm sure that people will want to know your secrets as well, how to do that. Braden, it would be interesting to hear your story, to paint the picture of, well, probably a different type of merger, but I think it's also important. So we wanted to show that there are very different types, and we will see what are kind of the common features of that.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Mari. Thank you, everybody else, for joining us here at the graveyard slot after lunch on Friday afternoon. It's good to see almost 100 people here, so thank you for listening. First, a little bit, the university I lead, Dublin City University. It's one of Ireland's young universities. We took in our first students just 1980. So quite young, very research intensive, ranked in the top 50 young universities in the world. That's the end of the advertising. Our merger, and I'll use a different word in a second, was both vision-driven, probably primarily vision-driven, but also policy-driven, or to some extent policy-supported. Thomas, your introduction was extremely helpful, and you captured a lot of the issues, and Thomas gave us a set of headings to speak to, so I'm going to speak to those headings. So, first of all, the kind of time frame and background. We started our process in the middle of 2012, so just 4 years. By the way, one of the best pieces of advice I got externally was, do it quickly.
Yeah.
If you do it slowly, it'll take forever and might never happen, but do it quickly. In our case, what we call is the DCU Incorporation Program. 4 institutions embarked willingly on a process in mid-2012 that will lead to the incorporation of St. Patrick's College in Drumcondra in Dublin, Mater Dei Institute of Education, and Church of Ireland College of Education within DCU. So at the end, which is next September 2016, one legal entity remains, those other entities cease to exist. So from next September, and we still haven't signed the legal agreements, which will happen in the next 2 months, all staff and all students of those institutions will be staff and students of DCU itself. The motivation, and the primary motivation initially, was to create something special in education. And this is leading to the creation of Ireland's first university-based faculty of education, which is maybe somewhat surprising, and we're calling this DCU Institute of Education. The 3 incoming colleges are known more for their teacher education, initial teacher education, but 2 of them have significant liberal arts and humanities, so it's leading to a significant expansion and enhancement of our own faculty of humanities and social sciences. But the starting point was about education. It'll mean we become a multi-campus university, but they're in close proximity. So our campuses will be within a circle, 3 campuses within a circle of radius 1 kilometre. And that proximity is extremely helpful. You asked about the types of institutions, Thomas, and I talked about the education focus, but the other significant feature for us was the fact that all 7 Irish universities are by act of government secular in nature and have to be, and the 3 incoming colleges are denominational. 2 of them are Catholic, 1 of them is Protestant. And that is the ethos of each of those. So you have the interesting situation of 3 denominational colleges coming into a secular university willingly, and that university remaining secular. So you can imagine some of the challenges. In terms of scale, DCU is about 13,000 students, over 1,000 full-time staff. St. Patrick's College is about 3,000 students, about 250 staff. And then the other two are quite small. Mater Dei Institute is 400 students, 50 staff. Church of Ireland College, 200 students and 30 staff. So scale is important, and that relative scale have certain factors. And can I say that attention to detail does not scale with size. In many ways, it's inversely proportional to size. But you can talk about that later on. The next heading Thomas gave us was the pressure to merge. Or was it top-down? Was it bottom-up? Or where did it come from? As I said, it did really start with a vision, and it resonated with something that in the last session Ellen Hazelcorn talked about, and that is the notion of treating the education process as a continuum, and the fact of the benefit of actually having teacher education going from early childhood through primary or elementary, through secondary and on to third level, all in one location, and treating the education process as that continuum. And secondly, bringing teacher education into a research-intensive university, and therefore making teacher education itself research-intensive. And thirdly, creating critical mass. And that really was the driving force. And our statement around that and our interest in that predated policy came about 6 or 7 months later, where, as part of landscape changes in higher education in Ireland, number one, the government here was looking at clustering, regional clustering and consolidations. But in the middle of that policy, they also focused in particular on initial teacher education. To put it in context, for a country of 4.5 million people, we had 19 different colleges offering education programs, teacher education programs. And I think there was about 23 or 24 such teacher education programs. And the contrast made was Singapore, which has one. So there was a motivation then for consolidation. They brought in Pasi Sahlberg from Finland, and he led an international review team to look at this. But it was very interesting just even to quote the terms of reference of that review team when it came in. This is before they started, and it's always useful to look at the terms of reference because it's probably the first chapter in the final report. It said that in countries where student outcomes are high, the following features are evident. Teacher education is research-driven. Graduate teachers are capable of applying research to their work. Relatively small number of institutions are involved in initial teacher education, and so on and so on. So you could see where this was going. And the outcome was that all institutions involved in teacher education were asked to make recommendations of how to consolidate. And we came together as 4 institutions willingly to create this vision of something special in Irish teacher education. The next heading that Thomas gave us was the main challenges. Well, we knew, looking at the denominational situation, if we did not fix that first and solve those issues, it was all over. So we spent the first year working through how we would deal with educating teachers for denominational colleges, non-denominational and multi-denominational, all in one location, and how you could respect the culture and ethos of denominational colleges within a secular university. And we were very fortunate that the 2 archbishops of the 2 denominations involved in Dublin were both progressive. So we created a vision statement, a booklet, and launched that with the Minister for Education and the 2 archbishops and ourselves, how we addressed this issue. And that was really what opened up the process to allow all the other things to happen. The other challenges were, of course, you mentioned communication. Hearts and minds are at the core of this, bringing people with us, because an overly top-down model without bringing hearts and minds with us would never have worked. The creation of structure of the new schools and faculties, spatial location where people will be located. We've just completed that in the past few weeks after many, many negotiations around this. And of course, we're dealing with the unions, transfer of people and so on. Lots of contractual issues. The legal situation is that we hope to close out in June of this year, and that will be 3 bilateral agreements. So the current state of play, you asked, all things going according to plan, but we have remained on track all the way through. We should be ready for September itself. So I'll stop at that point, and there are many more stories underneath that structure.
Thank you very much, Brian. I think it also shows another version of a merger, but I think there are already some elements coming up which are similar. I just wanted to pose a question actually to the audience. How many of you are actually in the situation of undertaking a merger or planning? Okay, so we have many hands going up. Okay.
We can sell consultancy available.
Many hands going up. So, and I also would like to address those who are watching us over the live stream. You can also send in questions if you're going through a merger and want to know the secret of how to do it. One point that you mentioned is you both already said a couple of the circumstances that are out there. In your case, Breden, you talked about the bishops and also the ministry. You also mentioned the higher education authority. Right? How autonomous are you actually then in the design of the strategy? How did you integrate that? I mean, there's of course the legal aspect is one that you need. You mentioned also that there needs to be a law followed. But how is it actually? How did you get your vision through? How much did you need to take account of these other actors?
I can say.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't have any bishops, but there were lots of other people involved. But and I mean. The sort of the overarching vision of the choice that was made to go in this direction, that was done by the government. Right? But for us, that was the starting point of a great opportunity served to us, infrastructure development and a new academic diversity that could, well, there are all kinds of synergies that can come out of that. And I already pointed to how that diversity is actually, I see it as tailor-made to face these very challenging times ahead. And we're talking about broad global challenges. So I think from the point when the decision was made, although there were stakeholders in the process sort of helping and supporting us, to put it that way, but in the actual process of making the strategy for the new university, and this I can say with my hand to my heart, I wasn't rector then, but I was the pro-rector, and I was actually the person that was told to lead the process towards the new strategy. So I know that we did exactly what we wanted. And we were just, you know, we were looking at the opportunities, possibilities in the new university. We were looking at, you know, how we could make the most of this new starting point and how we could cater for ambition, cater for the new culture and the pride, and obviously taking into account in that first strategy all the challenges to do with making one out of two, because you don't, well, you might say that officially you do it by the day you say, okay, so we merge and we're done, but you're not done. That's when it starts. so that's when the real work starts. And yeah, so I'll say that in making the strategy and developing the university, we've been autonomous, but obviously also we have lent ear to, obviously, there was a vision in the parliament, and it's not a bad vision, it's a very good one. So I think it's quite easy to say that, or to agree that here we have a great opportunity, how can we make a strategy to make the most of it? And that's what we've done, and I think we're in the same direction, but we're still autonomous. I felt that that's... yeah.
Okay, well that looks like a very important factor as well, and but probably
yeah, I think, I mean,
circumstances are...
The universities should be, research should be, you know, free and independent, full stop, I think. So sometimes people might think that there's this trade-off between autonomy and the fact that in my case there was obviously strong expectations from the government. But those strong expectations are actually quite similar to my expectations because they mirror the actual opportunities in this setup. So I don't see that as a problem.
That's what we also found in a number of cases. That is actually essential that you get the support. We found a case where actually the institutions needed to convince the higher education authority to support them in the merger. So I think it's very clear that this is an important factor. But as you said, Verena, I think it's also, you said you had very progressive archbishops. So that's also sometimes the specific circumstances play an important role, I assume.
Yes, I mean, I think for us we were and are very fortunate that the planets were aligned. I mean, this would not have happened in Ireland 20 years ago. So, and even the particular individuals involved. So strictly speaking and by definition, all the four institutions are autonomous, but autonomy is always relative. So we have a number of significant stakeholders. We were fortunate that the ministers that come through, the Higher Education Authority, the Department of Education and Skills were all, as I said, that we had policy support. The four institutional leaders believed in this vision. So the other stakeholder that I didn't mention that's very important, each of us has a governing body or a governing authority. So there was a job to be done in actually meeting with those and telling the story and telling the vision. So getting those on side at an early stage was very important. So because they're the people, not the leaders, who sign the eventual, or approve the eventual legal agreements. And I think that was very, very important indeed as well. So it wasn't a big factor in the process because we were fortunate, I think, from the very beginning.
Okay. There's one point you both were already mentioning that, and I would like to pick up on that, is also the timing. Yeah. Murray, you said 6 years of discussions, definitely too long. So here you already have one recommendation. Don't do it. But it probably also depends a little bit on the size, on the circumstances. But there's another aspect to it, and we've been talking about when is it finished. So you have the timeline of the creation of a new legal entity. But we could hear from both of you that's not it. So what would be your recommendations from your experience, apart from at the beginning, but also what's a realistic estimation, or what kind of aspects do you need to take into account of the process, of the length? How long of a breath do you need to go through that? Well,
for the first phase, what I said is that 6 years is unnecessarily long. I really do think that. In fact, well, it might sound crazy, but in fact, what the Parliament decision said in our case was that there wasn't to be a merger until the actual buildings and the infrastructure development was finished. So that will be 2019. You know, so then we'll be talking about 11 years. So luckily, or due to good working, we were able to pull that forward so that we merged in 2014. And what I would like to say is, you know, as long as you haven't reached that actual date, there's always this little opening to debate it again, to protest, and well, that's one side of it. But on the other side, all the people that are actually sort of on board and they're positive and they want it to happen, their insecurity, I think, is stronger up until that date. So keeping people in that challenging phase for a very, very long time, I just don't recommend it. And what we saw was that when we reached the date of 1st of January 2014, things changed. It was a real milestone. We celebrated, we had the king visiting, we had fireworks, we were celebrating all the good things that we were becoming. Actually, the planning of that event in itself was building culture, because we took all these elements from the different ways of doing things from the two institutions. We had this very symbolic tango where there are two excellent dancers, one from each of the campuses that, well, it sounds silly, but it wasn't. So we came away from this starting point with pride already, and it's just the date was passed, and now we're working. We're implementing, it's done, you just pull up your sleeves, you get to the work. So that was a real, it was a milestone, the date in itself was a game changer. So I would just recommend, obviously not rushing into things, but the sooner you can reach that date and start actually working, I think the better. So that was good. And if you ask me how long I think we will be in what you call the midst of merger, I'm not sure. Probably a while longer. But then again, how do you measure that you're there? You can measure it as academic successes of the kind that you wanted, in the interfaces, new and exciting things that wouldn't have happened if we were still two institutions. We're already there. So, that's going well. Do we still feel a sense of belonging to our old institutions? Yeah, I'm sure. But then at the same time, I think that if not 100% of the people, I think a very high percentage also have a sense of belonging to the new university. And for me, it's really not a problem to have multiple identities within your sort of work identity. I think that's just normal and common. So I'm not problematizing that. I'm actually, So in this case, the veterinary community, they should still have a strong veterinary identity in 100 years from now. That's not a problem. In fact, I think it would be a great problem if they didn't have that. So I think that there are many us's, and then there's one big us. And it's getting there. And I think it's also about allowing people to bring what they were into it. And that goes for both sides. So when I say they, it's they as in the people from the veterinary school, and they as in the people from the former agriculture community. So it's change is always challenging, but then you find the opportunity along the way, I think. So.
Okay, well, I think we've already got some great advice, because I think it's about really those elements and details that you describe who make the difference. I mean, about the processes, there are not so many secrets out there. I mean, I think it's also what we found in our reports. I mean, those are more the technical aspects as well that we, the establishing of the processes, etc. But it's sort of what are the key points, and sometimes they seem like small aspects of it which can create really key events, key change processes. Did you have that as well?
We did, and we found, first of all, I mentioned an aggressive timeline, but secondly, having milestone dates that you stick to and you flag very far in advance proved to be very important. So, for example, we front-loaded the process to last September so that all first-year students coming in last September were registered in our university. Okay. So people have crossed a line now in terms of this is happening. And it was very difficult, and our Vice President for Academic Affairs is in the audience, and she carried a lot of the load in making this happen. But it really has made the difference in the sense that both mentally, psychologically, and operationally we've crossed the line so that the actual next step is a lesser step. Just to make one important point in that regard, probably the best thing we did was recognize that this was too complex for academics and administrative staff to do on their own. So we sought external facilitation, went to tender, and PwC won that tender. And what really has impressed me is the generic nature of incorporations and mergers. There's so many factors, it doesn't matter what the entities are. It's people coming together and cultures and ethos coming together. And they deconstructed the whole process for us into 10 work streams. and we populated those with people. We now have close to 200 people day by day working on the process itself. But it's like a whole project management engine. And they were the ones said to us, be aggressive time-wise, look out for this issue, look out for that issue. 70% of mergers fail because of lack of communications. So all the factors that are generic to these things, they were good at. They weren't brilliant on the academic culture, but they got to know about it quickly. But we learned that having this driver, this objective driver of a process and looking out for issues was extremely helpful to us.
So it's actually that you have someone who's dealing with the technicalities, so that you can concentrate on the issues.
On the hearts and minds of the issues.
Hearts and minds of the issues.
And we have a large project management office that just runs this as a system. And that's why I think we've made every deadline so far.
Okay, I think those are already very good.
But it's,
I think we have now probably already quite a lot of questions there. I mean, we still have many topics to cover, but I really would like to open the floor as well to some questions coming in. I think there was one from, and if you always please say from which institution you are. Yeah.
At some point in time, leadership, vision, okay? Okay, it's much better now. At some point in time, you need leadership and vision. At what point in time you think you have to find the number one who's kind of embodying the merger itself? And do you think it's wiser to have somebody to lead the process until the factual merger, or to lead the merging process and stay aboard for a certain time period? Which of these options you think are preferable?
I think, well, maybe I think this because it's what we did, but so we had this interim board with an external chairman of the board that were dealing with very many of the decisions of the merger. I was elected rector approximately 8 months before the actual merger, and obviously from that point all decisions were run via me. And I started, so from that point I started building the new leadership. I appointed new deans. I had the opportunity to work 100% of my time preparing the new university for quite a number of months before the actual date, the starting date. And I think that was crucial for us to have the best possible start that we could have when we started 1st of January 2014. Not because it was me or anything, but just because I think that the new leadership who will own the process, who will own the visions, who really want this, you know, they need to want it. You cannot expect that kind, I think, or maybe you can expect, but that kind of commitment, I think you will only get from the actual person that is going to take the job. So I would definitely think that worked quite well for us. And even if we had prepared for 8 years or 6 years or whatever, and I had the opportunity to work full time for many months, you know, the first year, I'm not saying this to scare you, but it was rather chaotic. You know, you have to take things as they come, and it's like we've been talking about avalanches, but it's an avalanche, you know, and you have to be prepared for it. There's going to be 1,000 things on top of the wheels turning, and you need to be able to do that and just keep fighting it and keep fighting it, and then after 2 years, when you think you're getting into it, you start reorganizing.
I might just add a few comments. I think continuity of leadership is very important. But I think leadership is distributed. So obviously you have the institutional leaders coming in, but I think, certainly in our case, the senior management bear a huge load on this, and they have to believe in this as well and carry it with you, because it cannot be simply figureheads. The second thing is, as you've been hearing, but as we're aware, that mergers and the signing legal date, it's like peace agreements. The real issues happen after you sign the peace agreements and maintaining that. And we realize there's a huge process to continue into the future itself. So I think that's very important. And the final thing about leadership, in the new merged entity, I think integration of leaders from the constituent institutions into the senior structure is incredibly important as well.
I'm noticing a couple of questions just on this question. I think there's also very interesting, because I see Stephen Wang in the audience, who was also part in our focus group, rector of Linnaeus University, and I think that was a key point also, this question in your institution. Would you like to comment on that? We have a microphone for Stephen there. Because I think there are very different situations.
Thank you. Yeah, yes, it's a key point that, I mean, when we did our merger in 2010, I became the first rector, and I had no previous history in the two old institutions, but my two pro-rectors did, so they were pro-rectors of the old institutions. So that combination of both new leadership and old leadership, I think, was crucial in both that you don't bring so much of the history, but still enough of the history to understand what is happening. And I think that is very important to think of when you do a merger, that you have both the new and the old leadership coming together. And I recognize a lot of the things you are going through. Yeah, I'm sort of a couple of years sort of ahead of you, and I recognize also the need for, for reorganization. I did also a new organization 3 years after the merger, so one sort of very important point which you are both, I think, making is that one has to be prepared for a rather chaotic situation in the beginning. And it's very good that you come in as a leader as soon as possible, in fact. And I think that coming in, as you did, Marie, for a couple of months before is really extremely important for being there and putting a lot of effort making transition smooth.
Thank you very much, Stephen. We have some common points here, I think. Also, before we give to the audience, we already some questions coming in through Twitter. I just want to pick that up because it's going a little bit in the same direction. Someone asked a question: does it help when merging to hire some new people who have no legacy affiliation? So we've been talking about the leadership now, but I think it's also new institution probably also. Do they need new staff? How does it?
Yeah.
Mary?
Do you need new staff? Yeah, I think that new staff will, well, if you have new staff, people will not think, oh, well, they're saying that because they're really thinking something else. Because this kind of thinking, at least in the early phases of a merger, I think is quite common. But I think that was one of the things that really changed with the actual merging date. Because that is about lowering your shoulders, trusting each other, having the confidence that, people are there for our common project, not for, you've been working sort of from two different angles, and then you have to trust that from now on we're working from this one angle. And but what I did was have some new key people in, and I will call them sort of the bridge builders, and especially in the department or the part of the university that had the strongest interface, which was the Faculty of Biosciences and Veterinary Sciences. I found this extremely energetic, fantastic person to become the new dean, and he had a background from both communities, which was genius, wasn't it? Yeah. So he had, when he came in, he had the trust of sort of both the old parties, and the way that he's been able to pull it together, it's his personality as well. It's great. But that has been wonderful, and I think that probably if he'd had come from one or the other side, it would have been more difficult for him. So the starting point that he had with a background from both places, and he had been off elsewhere for many years doing things that people thought were very interesting, like innovation and aquaculture and lots of fun stuff all over the world, and he came back and he has all this energy. He was just pulling people together, saying, look at this vision, we can do this, come on, let's do this. So when we were able to get that huge research-driven innovation platform that we did get within the first year, that was, at least partly, that was his doing. Because we have great scientists, so it's all about bringing them together. And he's taken them all out on islands and had, taken people to islands, not to Ireland, but, well, it's an island as well. It's too big. So he took them out on an island for a seminar for 2 days, talking about opportunities. No one could escape until they were done. Things like this. It's just, bringing people together. Simple as that. Not focusing on the bad things, but on the opportunities. And when people start trusting, when people start seeing opportunity, and you lower your shoulders, because I think that in the very early phases, very many people were thinking, what's happening to my university? I love this university. I love my work. I want to be able to keep doing what I'm doing. And what if the university now suddenly gets a profile which makes me on the very fringes, these things. So it was very important, and then we come to a key area called communication. I think the leader, although this university is definitely developing into a profile which is it's differently stated or wrapped than it was before, but it's an inclusive rhetoric. Everyone's on board, and it's when I pull all of you together, that's when we can really succeed. So if I had a rhetoric talking about core areas or supportive disciplines or things like that, I think it would have just fallen apart. But the fact that we were able to build a story and a discourse and a rhetoric where everyone's equally important, and it's when I bring people together from civil engineering and veterinary sciences and landscape planning and the business school, and that's when we can start working on these global challenges. So we've really gone up there with the ambitions and the vision, but I think it was necessary, and I think we're believing it.
So it's really about bringing the people together, putting them on an island. It is also about the hearts, talking to the hearts, probably, right, that you mentioned.
I think it's multifaceted, and ultimately organizations are about people, and people have to get to know each other. I think identity is hugely important. You talked about that shift in identity, collegiality, and we've noticed even over the past 8 or 9 months, individuals in the incoming institutions have started to use the Dublin City University address and affiliation on their publications, on their presentations, and a belief. So I think common events, getting people to come to events and get to know each other socially as well as academically, hugely important. But I think communications in all its senses are critically important, and I think there's no single right way, because different modalities of communication suit different individuals. You have to keep doing communications until people tell you to stop. So whether it's town hall events where you go and face the crowds and take the hard questions, whether it's multiple emails. We set up websites, email addresses so you could submit questions. And it's still not enough, but you have to keep doing this. I know I have, and some of the other institutional leaders have spent a lot of time putting out rumor wildfires, right? So anytime there's a vacuum of information, you can be sure rumors will start, and they will not be positive. So you go out there, so you realize the way to avoid that is just keep telling the story. Once there's anything decided, we've told people, as soon as anything's decided, we'll send you out the minutes of meetings, we'll send you out communications, bringing together all the conclusions. So very, very important, but I think face-to-face and going out to schools, departments, faculties, the other institutions, and listening to the hard questions. And as you say, people don't like change, and they can articulate that in some quite strong ways. But it's being willing to listen and give that rationale, give that vision, give it that excitement about what's achievable all the time. I think it's critically important.
Transparency aspect
yes.
is very, very important.
Very important. Yes.
We've got a number of questions. I would like to take a couple of them because I think we need to first in the front row, and we'll take 2 or 3 questions, and then we see maybe there are some common ones. Yes? If you, again, say where you come from.
I think, Brian, we've heard, I suppose,
just could maybe say where you come from and from which institution you come from.
Oh yeah, and you are Galway retired. We've heard the DCU part of Chapter 1 of mergers of higher education institutions in Ireland. I mean, Galway has been going through a process with St Angela's and the Shannon College of Hotel Management. And then University of Limerick has been going through a process more akin to what you've done, but with Mary Immaculate College.
Nope.
Well, it's in the papers or something, but and that's not what I want. That's not really what I want to ask the question about. But it's Chapter 2 to do with the Institutes of Technology, and just any comments on how you feel that chapter might evolve.
Do we take maybe just another question?
The lady in blue, I think.
Collect a couple on. There was one in the row, and then I've noticed here.
My name is Susan Webster from Florida International University in the U.S. And as Mary mentioned, mergers are a big financial commitment. So I was just wondering if y'all could talk a bit about how your mergers were financed. I know there are a variety of models and intricacies, special allocation from the government, how it was decided, who would contribute what. If you could briefly address that. Thank you.
Okay, and the third question. It's the same question. Okay. Any other question? I think there, and then just here and here. So we take.
Maureen on the IPA. I just want to know what attention did you pay to organisational culture that existed in the organisations before you merged them?
Is the microphone on? Because I'm not hearing.
So I'll try again. I'm just wondering how much attention did you give to organisational cultures of the primary organisations before you merged into one body?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's the first round of questions, and then we come back to the other question. Maybe the first question, Brian, to you was a very specific one.
I mean, the question, the context of the question from Jim is that a number of the institutes of technology in Ireland are pursuing a process leading to a technological university status, and the requirement in that process is that they merge, first of all. So, and I know the one I know best is the one nearest to us geographically, is Dublin Institute of Technology and IT Tal and IT Manchester. I mean, they're in a very similar process to ourselves, so we meet every so often. We're, parts of different clusters, and we share experiences. I mean, I think it's a learning experience for them as well. So, I mean, I can't comment on any other aspects of it other than that, and I won't. But that's all I can say about that, really. The one I mentioned about Limerick is that they're not merging. And there are different models for the different initial teacher education providers. Some are just clustering, some have alliances, but this is, apart from what Galway is doing, is the only one that's full integration and full co-location, which for us was critically important. So all faculty, all students involved in this on the one campus. So the richness of that, I think, was critical. Can I add just a little bit, and then Mary, about the organizational culture piece? It's absolutely crucial. I mean, you can't start off by allowing that to be the driver, but you ignore it at your peril. And I think it's a recognition of that identity and ethos and culture. And it goes not just with denominations, it goes with scale. Smaller organizations behave in a much different way to large ones. So like we've one organization 200, another one 400. We're 13,000. Just how one does things in a university is much different than a small college. So it's a recognition of that and allowing people time to accommodate that change, I think, is critically important. But recognizing the values as well of those individuals and being mutually respectful. And that's why a lot of dialogue, social getting together is critically important. And even creating a bit like the trip to the island, creating some projects to let people to work together with a common goal, but you know, with the collateral benefit of getting to know each other and respecting each other.
I can add to the financial bit and also the cultural. Well, merging in the short-term perspective, and then short-term in this sense is at least 5 years, is very expensive in terms of efforts and in terms of, you know, the money it costs to actually get it done. So the costs will go up like this, and then maybe if you're lucky, they'll end up somewhere lower than where you started. And in many situations, this will be one of the driving forces for a government, for example, to have a merging process, is because there's an idea that the new institutions will be more efficient. And maybe in the longer term that is possible, but in the, let's say, 5-year perspective at least, it will be more expensive also in terms of the expenditures. So just getting everything done, getting in place, having new systems work, yeah, there's so many things. Yeah, so then, so we did get in the first couple of years, but that was actually before the actual merging point, we did get some extra funding from the government. Not very much, and not near what it actually cost, but we did get something. But right now, it's our budgets that are carrying it. And the fact that we are able to, you know, keep the wheels rolling, and not only that, we're actually increasing and enhancing our performance. To me, that is efficiency. You know, I want to brag and say that we're really doing a good job, because the expenditure that we are actually carrying now in this phase of the merger it's huge. It's huge. And for us, it's a specific situation, a little bit different maybe, because we're both doing the actual merger and we are doing our part of this huge infrastructure development, which is obviously that is funded by the government. And so the government pays for the new facilities. And it's this separate building agency, let's just call it that, a statal building agency that's doing the actual construction and the planning of the construction. But it's such a huge investment, a huge development, that our part in it now, which is being the future user, but also the future owner and manager of these facilities, just planning for that and the hours that we put into it is an enormous amount of money. And let's just say that it's very costly. I would be very quick then to say that obviously for us it's worth it. It's totally worth it. We're getting these fantastic new facilities, but it's very costly and very challenging right now. But it has to be done. So yeah, if your question is whether the government understands how much it actually costs in the short, they probably do. But yeah, we've been able to carry it so far, but it hasn't been easy. When it comes to the culture, I think it's one of the areas where you really cannot do enough. It's the same thing with communication. And communication is actually a crucial part of building the culture, because maybe one way of saying that you're approaching having the level of joint culture that you should have is when you start actually understanding what you're saying to each other. That sounds a bit weird. But, you know, in the early phases, I think we were talking to each other. We thought we were talking about the simplest things, like with things to do with administration and running the university. And then suddenly you realize that for months you've been talking to each other and you've been using the different terminology, different ways of expressing things, different ways of doing things. And it can take time to even realize that that's happening. So you have to be very careful with communication. You have to be, your ears have to be wide open. And when you start hearing things like, okay, so there's something going on, you have to take it straight on. We've tried to work with, you know, all the ceremonies that you have in a university. We've made new ceremonies, taking sort of good things from the ways that it was done before in the former institutions. Let's say one example, which is the start of the academic year when we receive all the new students and welcome them to the university, and we have this big ceremony, the immatriculation. And so we've made a new way of doing that, and we're symbolizing the diversity. And yeah, I'll tell you what we did. It was actually Ole Jørgen sitting here and his people that came up with it. We wanted to symbolize the diversity. So we actually, we are 5,500 students. So we enrolled 1,100 new students. And we bought 1,100 roses of different colors. And I actually stood there on stage and I shook everyone's hand and I gave all the 1,100 a rose. And when they were sitting in the aula, all the 1,100 different roses of different colors, that was just absolutely beautiful and showing how diversity is something really special. And obviously we had all the hashtags and everything going on, so you can go online and see all the incredible photos that the new students put out with the university name and stuff. So we've done small things like this, but we've also, it's allowed to have your own things, you know. If you have this really special ceremony that you do within landscape architecture or veterinary science, and you want to keep doing that once a year, please do. It's part of the identity. We don't want to take that away.
Just finding the right balance.
Yeah, it's
keeping the old
exactly.
and creating new, strong images. I think, like the picture with the roses.
Yeah, it was quite good, actually.
Image. I think, Brain, you wanted to say something as well on the financial aspect.
Yeah, I just thought, as you asked the question, maybe give the Irish context there. It's a very expensive process, and I think there are two main costs apart from infrastructure. There's just funding the process itself and backfilling people, bringing in the external facilitation, which wasn't cheap but hugely valuable. And then there's the commitment of staff themselves. I mean, we took a view that we wouldn't backfill anybody who wasn't extended beyond 25% of their existing commitments, which meant for a lot of people we were leveraging an additional 25% commitment. So we've done a costing of this, and it's probably going to cost about 10 million euro, which, I mean, we've had it evaluated. It's really at the cheap end of what this costs. And Deloitte have done a very significant report on educational mergers, and they reckon, I think it should cost something around 10% of the turnover of the receiving institution, the biggest institution, to give you just a scale. Now, that's not hard science, but just an estimate. For us, the government showed its support in that way as well, again, through the Higher Education Authority. They've actually supported this in steps along the way. They've checked how far we've gone. We've indicated what we spent. We've indicated what the university has given to it. So it's like a 50-50 co-fund in terms of cost itself. We could not have done this without the government support. Because we were coming through 6 years of austerity in Ireland. And so even all the issues of economies of scale and efficiency out the window when you're talking about multiple institutions where all the fat had been removed anyway through austerity. So you were talking about very, very lean systems, probably under-resourced systems coming together. So the concept of economies of scale and efficiencies just don't apply. And in that context, without the financial support through the Higher Education Authority, we would not be here. We would not be discussing this. So it just wouldn't be possible.
This is also something we found in our study. It's very clear that you don't do it in the short term to create efficiencies. This is something, it's a huge investment, of course, depending again on the size, but you can see we have two different types of mergers. So without financial support to get it off, it won't work. So we have seen this in all systems, that's very clear. But that means also at the same time that it does mean that it's a good idea to do that, because again on the other side you have this adding the value that you create. So you have to put those two things together. I mean, you have to have realistic expectations and also evaluate the cost. This is the other thing that we have seen, that you usually don't take account of all the full costs that you have. This is something we have seen. As you said, it's also the staff is involved. That means they can't do the things that they're actually meant to do, teaching and research, academic staff, even if you get an external support. So this is quite challenging, and so those are also costs involved. And then, of course, it's also sometimes difficult to calculate because you change your IT system. So all these kind of things are costs involved that you might do at a later stage. Well, anyway, so it's really difficult to come up. But I think it's very clear. No one should do it to make cost savings. That is, I think, a very clear message. Well, we've got 3, 4, 5 more questions. I think we take one last round of questions. And here in the front, please, could you start with the first question? I have 2, 3, 4. And please state again where you come from.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Orla Lynch, and I'm from QQI, which is the Irish Quality Assurance Agency. Green alluded to earlier, and I just wanted to pick up on a point that he made and maybe ask himself and Mary to elaborate on it, about the generic nature of mergers. And in fact, even I was kind of tuning in there to the conversation from a perspective we could really be talking about any organisation. And I'm just interested, are there specific aspects to merging universities that maybe aren't a feature of other mergers? So that's my question.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we have one further back there. One more question.
I come from University of Applied Sciences in Western Switzerland. 28 schools were merged about 20 years ago, but they took a very long time to put in place a real new convention, and I'm first rector of this school, so I was very naive lady when I came in this position 3 years ago, and there are a number of things that I did wrong that I would change now if I could go back. So I would like to know what you would do differently if you could be able to rewrite the past years. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a very good question. Then we have one question there in the back.
Thank you. Walter Lorenz, Rector of the Free University of Bolzano in Italy. I know the topic is mergers, but I just wonder whether in going down that road you also considered other ways of collaborating. We in Italy are at the moment working on the idea of clusters, for instance. My university itself being placed on the border with Austria. We are in the process of building a Euretro university with Austria, which obviously doesn't allow a merger because of the totally different legislation. But nevertheless, we would like to move towards coordination of courses, exchange of staff, avoidance of unnecessary competition, sharing of resources, and so on. So did you consider any other options before you actually settled on the concept of mergers, and with what kind of arguments, what kind of points did you then settle on the actual merger as the winning argument?
Thank you very much. I think another excellent question. And I think, is there one more question?
Well, then we have to remember some names, Thomas.
We'll forget them with you.
I'll put them out. I will come back. Okay, so I think we have that. I also have one more on Twitter. If we started maybe the first question on the generic aspects of mergers. So I repeat the question,
Okay,
one on generic aspects of mergers,
okay.
the second one, what would you do differently looking back? And one, the third one, have you considered alternative measures of collaboration?
So we've agreed to split some of these.
Excellent, because we have, I would give us another 10 minutes, and then we have to wrap it up.
If I take Orla's one, very good question. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned some of the generic issues. I mean, they're all the organizational things, the people, the psychology of reaction change, the timelines, all of those things. But I think what is different in the academic world is, well, culture again. The academic culture, and you know that famous statement, culture will eat strategy for breakfast. Culture is a very strong force. And I think the modus operandi, the operational behavior in universities is quite different from corporations. As you would know, they're not rigid organizations, and you can't instruct. It's not so it has to be about moving this amorphous organization together, really by appealing to the mind and the heart again. And I think PwC with us certainly recognized that you know, why can't you just say do this? You can't. You would lose people straight away if you did not bring them with. So there's all of this persuasion. So it's the art of persuasion throughout the organization, and all the time going back to the vision, all the time speaking to the values that are different across the institutions. All of those things make, I think, the academic merger stroke incorporation a bit more complex. And while I'm talking, I'll just finish my bit at this stage with a little bit of answer to our colleague from Italy. For us, looking at alliances or looser arrangements just would not have worked. We would not, for the vision we had, have got the coherence of creating a new entity that could operate as one mind and as one vision. And as I mentioned earlier on, we would not have achieved the benefits of critical mass, the whole notion of a co-location giving you this common value and exchange between different elements of the education system. We would have lost all that. And that was one of the key strengths that we wanted to achieve. And finally, creating a research-intensive culture for teacher education, which would not be the norm. So bringing it all into a university with that culture, we could not achieve through any of the looser alliances that other organizations made use of.
Mary, do you want to pick one or two of the questions?
Yes, I'll pick one or two of the questions. Yeah, we'll go to the first one. Yeah, no, and to the first one, it's yes, universities and leadership in universities is it's something else, and it's the best place to be a leader, I guess. But it takes lots of persuasion. So I agree with you there. What would I have done differently? Oh, yeah. Where to start? I mean, as I already said, we spent the first year extinguishing fires, you know. So knowing about those fires now and what was coming up, and many of them were surprises, you know. Many of them were things that we actually thought was going to work, but it didn't. So there are many sort of practical things that in retrospect we could have planned differently and we could have done differently. But then again, from the overarching view, I think the only thing to do in the first year of merger anyway is to just be ready for anything that comes, because it's going to be something. But obviously, when it's chaotic, it becomes very hectic. I probably could have spent more time already from the beginning, even more than we did, on culture, on building the new sense of belonging and strengthening the sort of story of the university. And what I haven't said is that I spent lots and lots of time, obviously, internally, and much more time internally as a leader. But I've also been on external arenas, positioning the university. And that's actually part of building that pride and sense of belonging, is that I'm out there sort of showing this image of the university. So maybe I should have been at least 2 or 3 persons. Yeah, you could maybe, yeah, that's exactly what I should have done. But actually I should have probably shared the work between people in a better way. I have a wonderful team of people, and we share the work. But maybe we could have done that in a better way to be stronger on the multiple arenas that we need to be on. I don't know, but I think this is a general leadership thing. If I could do the whole process again, I would have definitely done it quicker, as I already said. I would have also tried even harder to make the right decisions and not only compromise decisions at the first attempt, because then I wouldn't have to tidy up the path right now, which is very challenging. But I'm not sure that it could have been done. Not in our case, because it was a very controversial decision, and we just had to sort of lure it into the... Yeah. So, yeah, probably many things could have been done differently. And it's important to learn from the past to do things better, but then there's always this trade-off. I think from looking too much into the past and thinking about all the things that you did wrong, and you just get depressed. You have to keep going and do the best you can. And, yeah.
And there's probably just not one way of doing things.
No,
I think
there are many
that's
things.
the important part, that you probably have many different ways of doing it, many different paths. There's not just one right one. Do you want to maybe...
And then it was the question about have we thought about other ways of doing it. Well, in our case, this was already decided, so we didn't have that opportunity of thinking about. But we've had a merger process in Norway, a larger process, and there people have, or the different institutions have definitely thought about different ways of doing things. And we are merging now there were 2 institutions merging, but we're still keeping the sort of some clustery thoughts with other institutions at the same time that we already had. So yes, there are very many ways of cooperating, and I don't think the only... let's just say that there are many ways of doing things. I fully agree with you, and you don't always have to merge.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I think we have to come to a closure. I think it was a very, very rich session. There are still some questions that came in via Twitter. All 3 of us noticed we were on Twitter, so those questions we have an answer. We might come back to that while we go home. I think that's a very big question. I also would like to thank both of you really for your inputs. I think we've got many different aspects that are important to think about when you start a merger, when you continue with a merger that you're in the middle of, or when you consider it. Maybe just one last comment from everyone, one kind of quick message to people to take away with. I think both of you said, you've seen, Mari, you said you would need to be many people. So I think what people really can see, it's a tremendous effort really for the leadership. So is there one recommendation that you would like to give to people that would be in the same boat as you? How to manage it over such a long time to
I think
go through such a process?
Yeah.
Very quick, one word. You can
one sentence.
One sentence.
One sentence. Okay, it might be more than one sentence. Also, I'll go back to the advice that I was actually that I really took away from that focus group on mergers, and maybe it was Stephen who said it. But you know, it takes time. It takes effort. It's not that you're doing things wrongly. It's just, you know, just stick to it. Keep believing in it, and you know, trust in yourself and in the vision, and stand in it for a long time. And you know, because when I went to the focus group, this is more than one sentence. I was in this very chaotic phase. So just to hear from other people that yes, it is chaotic. It's normal. It's the way it is. Just keep working. You'll be fine. And now, Stephen, I'll be happy to tell you. You know, even though it's still quite chaotic in many ways, there's lots of work and it's challenging and everything, I think we're on top of it anyway. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I really have to challenge now.
One sentence, two concepts, persistence and consistency of vision. That's it.
See how he said what I said in one sentence?
Excellent. So you see there are two different ways of merging and also giving the messages. Thank you very much, really, to both of you. It's been an excellent session, and I just want to conclude with, if you're interested in that kind of type of dialogue, we will have many of these dialogues at the funding forum, which will take place in October at Porto. You have the flyers out there, you have that. That will be the kind of type how we discuss things, so I'm looking forward to seeing you there as well. Thank you very much. Well done.
Thank you so much.
Well done.
Well done.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.